Hey everyone, I've been a long-time reader of this here, but have never felt the need to share my own story until now. I'm 35 and my wife is 32, and we recently adopted a young boy after years of trying. We'd always wanted kids, but had made the decision at the beginning of our relationship that we would rather adopt than have a biological child. My wife has some medical issues that would make carrying a baby to term difficult, but not impossible. But after a few long and frank discussions, we agreed that we were plenty of children out there in need of a loving home and that we did not want to risk any complications with the pregnancy. We've been on the adoption journey for 3 or 4 years, and we're feeling incredibly burnt out. We're truly on the brink of giving up for a long few years of paperwork, background checks, and jumping through more hoops than you could ever imagine. Then 2 years ago, we got the call telling us that a little boy, only 3 years of age, was available to adopt. All of our years of trying had not been in vain. We finally had a child. Despite this, it was not all smooth sailing. Our son had been living in unsafe home conditions for the first 2.5 years of his life, and CPS, Child Protective Services, had to step in and remove him from the home. As a result, our little guy was incredibly nervous and withdrawn. The day we got to take our son home was the most important day of my life, a day that I'll always cherish. We arrived at the adoption center sweating anxious and unsure of how he would be meeting us for the first time. We signed in, met with his local social worker to discuss a few details, and then it was time. We were led into a room where a little boy was hiding behind a couch, watching the door fearfully. My wife and I went slowly into the room and sat down opposite of the couch and just waited for him to adjust to us being there. We softly said, "Hello," and introduced ourselves, and sat quietly until he felt confident enough to come out from behind the couch, which took about an hour. The moment I saw my son properly for the first time, it was all over for me. He, was and still is the most beautiful little boy I've ever seen in my entire life, with these big expressive eyes, curly hair, and a shy smile that I feel blessed to receive. The first smile he ever gave me was when he saw that I was playing with Legos, waiting for him to warm up to us. He slowly walked over to the table, saw the creation I've made, and looked up at me with an amazing shy smile. I said hello, and he whispered the softest, "Hey," right back. It took another hour or so, but by the time we left the center, our boy had allowed us to hug him, pick him up, hold his hand, though he was still incredibly shy. His social worker assured us that it would take some time for him to feel completely comfortable with us, but that he would be allowed us to interact with him already was definitely a great sign of how things are going to continue. It took some time, but our little boy eventually settled comfortably into our family. When we first brought him home, he naturally was nervous, sticking close to us and not wanting to go out of sight, and after a few weeks he began to come out of his shell, and we were so happy to see his personality start to reveal itself. What kind of face he makes when he doesn't like something, or what kind of things make him laugh. He has a love for heavy metal music, believe it or not, which we were shocked to discover when he starts singing along to a song on the radio on a trip to the grocery store. Despite the first 2.5 years of his life being filled with uncertainty and fear, our little guy has a curious and kind attitude. Although he's kept his shyness in the 2 years he's been part of the family, my wife is an only child, and so her parents have been over the moon to have a grandbaby to spoil. They live close by, and so have spent almost every Sunday with us and our boy since they met 2 years ago. The little guy absolutely adores his nana and grandpa, and it just makes me, and especially my wife, so darn happy. As I said, my wife is an only child, so only has her parents, so we thought introducing our son to them would be a first good step. And he was still quite reserved at this point. They spoil him, always bringing him treats and calling him their little prince. And the love of 3 of them share is just beautiful to witness. My family's always been a sore subject for me, and my parents were quite neglectful to my siblings and me growing up, and I had not reconnected with them by the time of their deaths in the past few years. The emotional abuse and neglect they inflicted on me and my brothers had led to a quite strained sibling dynamic. I'd only seen them a handful of times, and, well, up until we adopted our son, as I find that seeing them often brings up a lot of pain from my childhood. I'd rather forget about it. My wife has tried to encourage me to patch things up with them over the years, as I think she feels that since she missed out on having siblings, she wants me to have a good relationship with mine. Well, for that reason, we've made the decision to wait until now to introduce my son to my side of the family, as we wanted him to settle himself in and feel more comfortable here, and I truthfully have been worried about how my family will be towards him. They aren't bad people, but the impact our childhood, had on us did make me weary. Our son's well-being is the absolute most important thing to us, and he's already shy enough. In saying this, we have made the decision to have our son meet my brother and their families in the upcoming weeks. I'll admit I'm feeling incredibly nervous about it, as I have not seen my brother in a few years. But I do believe it's the best thing for my son. I'll leave this here, but I'll come back and update, and let you know how my brother gets along with my son. Thank you for reading so far. What's up, everybody? Mr. Reddito here. So today's drama, it's a pretty intense one between, OP and his family trying to introduce his new little kid. We do have some updates to hop into. I hope you're enjoying your day. Let's go ahead and hop right into it. Update number 1. Hey, everyone. I know it's been a few months since I checked in, and I just wanted to give you an update on how things are going with my son. As you'll remember, after years of trying, my wife and I adopted a beautiful little boy 2 years ago, and have recently decided to introduce him to my brothers and their families. This was a difficult decision to make, as our parents had been emotionally abusive and neglectful to us in our childhoods, and as a result, our relationship had been strained. Over the past 2 years, since we welcomed our son into our lives, I've made more of an effort to connect with my brothers, as my wife and I want our son just to have a connection with the family that he does have, especially as my wife has no siblings of her own. My brothers both have children around the same age as our boy, so we've always made sure that he spends some time with his cousins, as my wife has expressed how lonely she felt growing up with no kids her own age in her family, as she also had no cousins to spend time with. One of my brothers, Wayne, has twin boys with his wife, around the same age as our little guy. They get along amazingly well. He's my older brother and is the one that I get along with the best. As we sort of stuck together through our childhood, just looking out for each other, we've been able to bond over, fatherhood. And my wife gets along very well with his wife, as they both grew up in the same state. It makes me really happy to have this sibling connection, and I do have to give credit to my wife for encouraging it. It also makes me happy to see her build her own family connection, as I know how much her solitary childhood affected her, and my older brother and his wife are the closest family members we have. We go on camping trips together, have barbecues, and have regular family outings. Our sons get along amazingly, and both my wife and I can see how much of a positive impact spending time with his cousins has on our son. We believe that spending time with kids his own age has been crucial to letting him get out of this shell a bit and feel more comfortable in himself. My younger brother, Luke, he is a different story. As the baby of the family, he was often given the most care and attention, leaving Wayne and me to fend for ourselves. As a result, he often told us that the neglect and abuse were not as bad as we made it out to be, and that we were both just being dramatic. As you can imagine, this led to a lot of resentment from us toward him. Despite this, I have made an effort to keep in contact with him over the years, as he is still my baby brother. We had my brother and his wife and daughter over for brunch on a Sunday to see how everyone got along in a casual setting. As always, our son was shy at first, taking a bit of time to warm up to them, but soon was playing with his cousin while the adults spoke over coffee. As I mentioned, I do still feel somewhat resentful towards my brother, due to him having an easier time in childhood than I did, but I made a concentrated effort to swallow my feelings for my son's sake. despite my brother making some snide comments here and there. What I took issue with, and still do, is my sister-in-law, Georgia, her attitude towards my son. Upon meeting him, she seemed standoffish and did not really speak to him, in comparison to my brother, who made an effort to engage with him. When my son and niece were playing, my sister-in-law would insist that my son was taking the toys from his cousin. Despite us seeing that this was not the case, what took me over the edge was, while getting ready to leave, my sister-in-law started talking about her daughter's upcoming birthday, and that she had booked a special playhouse dinner for the birthday party. Well, my wife asked if there was anything that we could bring for the event and informed her of our son's dietary restrictions for the meal, just to be on the safe side. My sister-in-law looked at her in confusion, saying that she had only booked children's meals for her little girl, and our elder brother twins, saying that the event was only for her daughter's cousins. My wife and I were baffled and reminded her that our son is her daughter's cousin too, and she insisted that she meant his real cousins, not including our son. Things turned awkward as we asked her what she meant by real cousins, and she began to mumble something about being related by blood. I don't know what to think, as I've never expected anyone in my family to have any sort of issue with my son due to him being adopted, as this is not anything strange in this day and age. So, we reminded my sister-in-law that our son is family regardless of whether he's related by blood, and that the attitude is not acceptable. So, they left soon afterward looking sheepish, and my wife and I had to double-check that our son had not heard what his aunt had said about him. There have been a few instances of this since then, and my older brother has told me that she's been saying similar things to his wife too. When I brought it up to my younger brother, he shrugged her nasty behavior off, saying that we were reading into things and that of course she loves our son as part of the family, which is just clearly not true. We've limited our time spent with them in the months since, as we do not under any circumstances want this to affect our son's self-esteem, especially as he already struggles with being shy and has been taken away from his birth parents. His well-being is much more important to us than spending time with people who are going to make him feel small. The problem is that my younger brother's daughter's birthday is coming up next weekend, so the whole family will be together. My wife and I have decided to go, as our sons loved his cousins, but have agreed that if there are any comments made by my sister-in-law, we will confront her about her nasty behavior, as it's unacceptable and our son does not deserve it. I'll leave this here for now, and I'll come back and update the group of how things go at the birthday party next week. We're hoping that nothing happens, as it's been nice to spend time with my little brother again, but as I said, my son is the most important person in my life, and I'll do anything it takes to keep him safe and happy. Thanks for reading. Update number 2. Hey everyone, I know it's been a while since I've checked in. Well, before I get to the update, I just want to say thank you for all the kind messages I've received from you, offering messages of support, and I really appreciate everybody who's taken the time to check in with us. As you'll remember, we had an event coming up where we would be seeing my sister-in-law again, at my younger brother's daughter's birthday. As some of you will have expected, my sister-in-law again started acting hostile towards our son, refusing to let him play with her daughter and telling employees not to serve him birthday cake as he was not, quote, part of the family. My wife and I lost it at this point as our son was in tears. We pulled her aside and told her that if she ever spoke to or about our son like that again, she would be very sorry. Her husband, my little brother, starts to threaten me, saying that I was intimidating his wife, but hey, we just, shrugged it off. We demanded an apology from my sister-in-law to both of us and our son, but she refused, maintaining that she has only been speaking the truth, according to her, because he is adopted and not blood-related like her precious daughter. She doesn't consider him a real part of the family. I responded by saying that, by that logic, she herself is not part of the family as she's just married into it, and she starts crying loudly and dramatically. At this point, she's made a scene, so my older brother suggested that we leave. And I let everyone calm down for a few days. Our son was distraught, absolutely distraught, when we got home, and we had to spend a long time cuddling him and making sure he knew that what his aunt was saying was completely untrue. But I'm sure, as you know, a 5-year-old can't grasp the full nuance of the situation. All my wife and I could do was tell him over and over that he's our special boy. We love him more than anything in the world, and his aunt is just being mean and telling lies. But having to do that absolutely broke my and my wife's heart, and our son has already been through enough trauma in his short life, and he absolutely does not need any more. We decided that we were not going to see my younger brother and his wife from now on, for the well-being of our son. A few days after the party, we received a phone call from my little brother, who condescendingly asked us to apologize to his wife for upsetting her at her own daughter's birthday party. We flat out refused to do this, reminding him of what led to that confrontation and that she was bullying a 5-year-old boy. He was livid at this, saying that his wife had only been joking and that we should not take things so seriously, that we are family. Well, I said to him that his wife did not consider my son's family, and so I did not think of her as a part of mine. My brother began to yell, but I just hung up the phone, as I was not interested in fighting about something I'd made my mind up about. This was 3 weeks ago, and neither my wife nor I have made any contact with my side of the family, despite receiving many calls and texts, most of them angry and threatening. This is a hard line we've drawn in the sand, as we will not tolerate anything that will upset my son or affect the way he sees himself, under any circumstances. We've decided to take some time to calm down and maybe touch base in a few weeks to see if my sister-in-law will apologize, as we can see how much our son misses his cousins. Thank you all for reading this far. I'll be back in a little bit, and I'll let you know what happened. Update Number 3. Hey, it's been about a month since I last updated, and I just wanted to share some of the things that have happened since. The craziest thing is that a few days after my last update, I received a call from my family's lawyer, telling me that my great-aunt had just passed. I'd been very close with her as a child, spending most if not all my summers with her in an attempt to escape my emotionally abusive parents. She was a soft and kind woman with a hell of a sense of humor, and I actually felt more affection for her than I did my own parents. We'd lost contact over the years, and I had not thought about her in quite some time. Getting a call was a shock, and so was the news that she had left everything she owned to me, including her beautiful home and all her possessions, in what amounted to around $2 million. I know it sounds unbelievable, trust me, I know, but my great-aunt had married an oil tycoon in her youth, and who had died quite young, leaving his fortune to her. She'd been a recluse, and, well, a bit of a hoarder, and so just kept all the money instead of spending it, and apparently had decided that I was the worthy one that's going to receive it. In the days that followed, we received numerous calls from extended family, checking in an attempt to try to get some money for themselves. People that I have not even seen since I was a little boy. Well, I expected this, but what I had not expected was to get a call from my brother and his wife, absolutely begging for forgiveness. As you'll remember, my sister-in-law had been mean and hostile towards my son, resulting in us cutting off contact with her. Due to her unwillingness to apologize, she had always stuck to what she had said and made it clear that she did not feel she was doing anything wrong. So, imagine our surprise when we received a call from her a week or two ago, telling us just how sorry she was for upsetting our boy, and asking us to come over so she could apologize to him in person. Now, my wife and I are not stupid people. What are the chances that they have been telling my wife of my great-aunt's death? That I was receiving the inheritance and that my sister-in-law had spontaneously seen the error of her way? We knew that they were just trying to get some of the money for themselves, but wanted to hear the apology anyways. For our son's sake, and also to see if we could bring back some stability in our family dynamic. We would not be receiving the money for a few weeks anyway, so what was the harm? So, we went into their home last week, and my sister-in-law apologized to my son, telling him that she'd been mean and had been telling lies about him not being part of the family. Our son was over the moon to hear this, and to be able to play with his cousin again. Everything seemed to be going swell, and we had accepted her apology until my wife overheard my sister-in-law being nasty about my son. Yet again, this time and right there in front of his face. While speaking to her daughter, she had told her daughter that she did not have to let my son play with her toys, as she only had to share with her, quote, real family. At that point, my son burst into tears and ran to my wife, who had been just outside the door and could hear everything. Clearly, my sister-in-law had expected no one to believe my son if he told us what she had just said. We quickly picked him up and, before leaving, told my sister-in-law that she's a horrible person and deserves nothing from us, and she began to cry and scream that she didn't mean it. But my wife and I quickly left with our son in our arms. Yet again, we had to reassure him that he is our family and that we love him more than anything else in the world, but yet again, this is just too much for a 5-year-old to comprehend and be able to take in. Since then, we've gone radio silent with everybody, even my older brother, who I had more of a positive relationship with. We've had to damage control with our son, as all of his back and forth has really taken a toll on his self-esteem. The inheritance money comes in 2 weeks' time, and my wife and I have decided to save most of it for our son until he gets a bit older. I'll leave this here for now, but I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone for your kind messages over the past few weeks. Well, they're truly appreciated, and the support really means a lot to us. Thank you again. Update number 4. Hey guys. I just think this will be my last update, to be honest with you, as things seem to have calmed down recently. As per my last update, I'd been told I'd been getting a large amount of money as an inheritance from my great aunt, who had taken me in when I was a child trying to get away from my neglectful parents. My brother and sister-in-law had tried to secure some of the money for themselves by pretending to be sorry for bullying my son for being adopted, but had quickly shown their true colors yet again. The inheritance money came in about 2 months ago, and as I mentioned in the previous update, we chose to put the majority of it into a trust fund for our son, as his security has always been our #1 priority. We decided to give some money to my wife's parents, and they used it to go on luxury cruises for a few weeks, which they absolutely loved. Despite all the drama on my family side, it makes my wife and me so happy that our son had such a good relationship with his grandparents. We gave some money to my older brother and his family, as he'd always been the more decent of my 2 brothers and had not tried to manipulate me into giving him any money. As the oldest brother, he has always done what he believed was best to look out for us, and I do appreciate him for that. My younger brother called every day for weeks after we got the inheritance, alternating between leaving kind of a sweet message and reminder of the few good times of our childhood. Well, but mostly left threatening and emotionally manipulative ones. He would scream that I'd never done anything for him, had always exaggerated about how abusive our parents had been, and that I'd been threatening his wife. She was often on the call as well, whispering about how our son would never be accepted as part of the family, and that her daughter will never see him as her cousin. After a while of listening and deleting the messages, making sure that our son never heard them, we eventually blocked them and changed our number. We even sent them an official cease and desist, which seems to have been effective, as we have not heard from them in about 3 weeks. It's a huge shame that it had to end like this, but in a way, I'm glad that my brother and his wife showed their true colors, as we now know not to let them be anywhere near our son. As I've said multiple times, our son's safety and happiness is the most important thing to my wife and me, and we would stop at nothing to make sure of that. If that means having a small family unit, so be it. And at the end of the day, our son knows how much we love him, and that's the most important thing in life. We just want things to be calm and stable from now on for his sake. I'll leave this here, as I don't think I'll have anything to add from here on out. But I want to say again how much I appreciate the support that I've received from the people in this group. You've been a lifeline for my wife and me, and we could not be more grateful. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts.